My name is Marjorie Vance, and I am 47 years old. 3 months ago, I stood in my kitchen clutching my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, listening to my mother say 11 words that finally broke the illusion of family I had been maintaining for decades. Oh, Marjorie, don't be selfish. Roberta needs us right now. I remember the exact quality of the light coming through the window, a harsh, mid-morning glare that illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air and the pile of unpaid medical bills on the granite counter. I had just asked my mother Estelle the most important question of my life. I had asked her to come to Chicago for 5 days to watch my 10-year-old twin boys William and Henry while they underwent a complex simultaneous spinal tethering surgery. It was a procedure we had been waiting on for 2 years. It was the difference between my sons walking into high school or being confined to wheelchairs by age 16. Selfish, I asked, my voice trembling, though I tried to keep it steady. Mom, this isn't a vacation. The surgery is scheduled for the 14th. I can't be in 2 recovery rooms at once. I need another adult to help manage the post-op care. I just need you to sit with Henry while I'm with William. There was a sigh on the other end of the line, the kind of dramatic, long-suffering exhale Estelle had perfected over 70 years of getting her way. Marjorie, you're not listening. The 14th is the weekend of Roberta's rebirth celebration. She's renting a yacht in Newport. She's calling it her Phoenix Rising party after her divorce. It's a very fragile time for her. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, heavier than gravity. Roberta's divorce was final 3 years ago, Mom. She's thrown 3 parties for it. My sons are having their spines operated on. They are your grandsons. And Roberta is your sister, Estelle snapped, her tone hardening into that familiar diamond-edged sharpness. She has been through hell with that settlement. She needs her family around her. She needs joy. Honestly, Marjorie, you always choose the most inconvenient times to have a crisis. Can't you reschedule? No, I can't reschedule a surgical team that has a 6-month waiting list, I whispered, staring at the calendar on my wall where the date was circled in red marker. Well, then you'll figure it out. You always do. You're the capable one, aren't you? That's your role. Roberta is the sensitive soul. She needs support. You're fine. I am a widow, Mom. I said, the words tasting like ash. I am doing this alone. I am not fine. Don't play the widow card, dear. It's been 4 years. It's unbecoming. The line went dead. I didn't hang up. She did. Estelle Vance didn't like conversations that made her feel guilty, so she simply ended them. I stood there in the silence of my suburban kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in a house that felt suddenly terrified and vast. The boys were at school, blissfully unaware that their grandmother had just chosen a yacht party over their ability to walk. I wish I could say I was shocked. I wish I could say this was an aberration in an otherwise loving relationship. But as I set the phone down on the counter, looking at the black screen, I realized this wasn't a new wound. It was just the deepest cut in a scar that stretched back 40 years. To understand why my mother could so easily dismiss a spinal surgery for a cocktail party, you have to understand the architecture of the Vance family. In the house where I grew up, there were 2 distinct roles, the sun and the shadow. My sister Roberta, 2 years younger than me, was the sun. She was blindingly bright, volatile, demanding, and the center of my parents' universe. I was the shadow, quiet, functional, always there, but rarely noticed unless I was obscuring the light. My father, Lawrence, a retired corporate litigator, and my mother, Estelle, a woman whose entire identity was built on social standing and country club mixers, didn't want children. They wanted accessories. Roberta was the perfect accessory, loud, charming, beautiful in a fragile way that required constant tending. I was sturdy. I was sensible. And in the Vance household, sensible was a synonym for ignorable. The memories washed over me as I leaned against the kitchen island, my high school graduation. I was valedictorian. I had written a speech about resilience. I scanned the bleachers for my parents as I walked to the podium, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm. They weren't there. They arrived 40 minutes late, just as the ceremony was ending. Roberta had experienced a breakdown because her prom dress fitting hadn't gone well, and she needed Lawrence and Estelle to calm her down with a brunch at the Ritz. "We knew you'd be fine," Lawrence had said, patting my shoulder distractedly while checking his watch. "You're always so independent, Marjorie. We didn't need to hold your hand." They didn't hear my speech. They didn't see me receive the award. They took us out to dinner that night, but the conversation was entirely about Roberta's dress crisis. I sat there 18 years old, cutting my steak into tiny, precise squares, learning the lesson that would define my adulthood. My needs were invisible because I didn't make enough noise. Then there was my wedding to Charles. We wanted a small, elegant ceremony in the garden. Estelle hijacked the planning, turning it into a lavish ballroom affair that was more about impressing her bridge partners than celebrating my marriage. But the kicker. During the reception, Roberta announced her first engagement. She grabbed the microphone from the band leader and sobbed about finding her soulmate. My parents spent the rest of the night toasting Roberta while Charles and I sat at the head table holding hands under the tablecloth. "It's okay," Charles had whispered to me, kissing my temple. "We have each other. We don't need them." But Charles was gone now. A sudden aneurysm 4 years ago had taken him from me in an instant, leaving me with two 6-year-old boys who had inherited his gentle eyes and a congenital spinal condition that was slowly twisting their bodies. For 4 years I had managed. I had built a successful freelance graphic design business from home. I had navigated the endless specialist appointments, the physical therapy, the IEP meetings at school. I had asked for nothing. I had been exactly who they wanted me to be, the stoic, low-maintenance daughter. The shadow. I thought that by asking for help this one terrifying time, I might finally be seen. I thought the gravity of surgery and twins might outweigh the gravitational pull of Roberta's ego. I was wrong. I was 47 years old, and I was still the girl scanning the bleachers for parents who weren't coming. The days leading up to the surgery were a blur of terrifying logistics. I tried to hire a medical nanny, but the agencies were booked solid or charging rates that would bankrupt me. I called friends, but people have their own lives, jobs, kids' vacations. They offered prayers and casseroles, but no one could offer the 24-hour in-hospital support I needed for 5 days. I hit rock bottom on a Tuesday evening, 3 days before the procedure. I had just put William and Henry to bed. They were scared. Henry had asked if he would wake up. William had asked if it would hurt. I had been the strong mother smoothing their hair, reading them chapters from Treasure Island, promising them it would be an adventure. But once their door was closed, I collapsed. I didn't just sit down. My legs gave out. I slid down the hallway wall until I hit the floor, burying my face in my knees. The silence of the house wasn't peaceful. It was predatory. It amplified the crushing weight of my isolation. I was an orphan with living parents. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. A notification from Instagram. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was a photo from Estelle. She and Lawrence were at a boutique in Newport holding up turquoise silk scarves. The caption read, "Getting ready for our phoenix to rise. So proud of our Roberta for choosing joy. Hashtag family first, hashtag Newport life. Hashtag family first." The hashtag felt like a physical slap. I threw the phone across the hallway. It hit the baseboard with a loud crack, but I didn't care. I pulled my knees to my chest and let out a sob that had been building for 4 years. It was a raw, ugly sound. I was crying for Charles, who should have been here to hold the other hand. I was crying for my boys who deserved grandparents who knew their middle names. I was crying for the little girl inside me who was still waiting for her turn. I lay there on the hardwood floor for an hour, staring at the ceiling, trying to formulate a plan B, C, or D. I would have to hire a stranger from a nursing app. I would have to leave one boy alone for hours while I tended to the other. I would have to split myself in two, and I knew I would fail. I was exhausted. Not just tired, bone-deep, soul-level weary. I closed my eyes and whispered into the empty hallway, "I can't do this. I really can't do this." And then the doorbell rang. It was 9 o'clock at night. I wasn't expecting anyone. I wiped my face with my sleeve, pulled myself up, and checked the peephole. I froze. In my driveway sat a sleek black town car, the kind that whispers money and discretion. Standing on my porch, illuminated by the yellow bug light, was a man in a charcoal wool coat, leaning heavily on a cane with a silver handle. He was tall, broad-shouldered despite his age, with white hair swept back from a face that looked like it was carved from granite. I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Not since the day Estelle had screamed at him to get out of her house and never come back. It was my grandfather, Archibald Vance, my father's father. I opened the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Grandpa! He looked older, of course. The lines around his eyes were deeper, and his posture was slightly more stooped, but the eyes, steel gray and piercing, were exactly as I remembered. He looked at me, really looked at me, scanning my red eyes and my disheveled sweater. Marjorie, he said. His voice was gravel and old bourbon. May I come in? It's freezing out here and my driver needs to use the restroom. I stepped back, dumbfounded. Yes, of course. He stepped into the foyer, bringing with him the scent of cold air and peppermint. He didn't hug me immediately. He took off his coat, handed it to me, and then leaned his cane against the wall. Then he turned and placed both hands on my shoulders. His grip was surprisingly strong. You look like hell, kid, he said softly. A fresh wave of tears pricked my eyes. Thank you. It's been a week. I heard, he said, how I haven't spoken to you since your mother banished me for the crime of telling her she was a vapid narcissist. Archibald smirked, a dry twisting of his lips. I have my ways. I still have friends at the club even if I don't go. People talk. I heard Lawrence bragging about a yacht party. I asked about the boys. He mentioned something about elective surgery being a nuisance. It's not elective. I snapped, the defensive anger rising automatically. It's spinal tethering. If they don't have it... I know. Archibald interrupted, his voice gentle. I looked it up. I called the hospital. I know everything, Marjorie. He walked past me into the living room, his cane tapping a rhythmic beat on the floor. He looked around at the modest furniture, the framed photos of the boys, the lack of clutter. He nodded as if approving. I'm here, he said simply. Here for what? To be the other adult. To sit in the waiting room. To shout at nurses if they're slow with the pain meds. To watch Henry while you watch William. He sat down in the armchair that used to be Charles's favorite. He looked comfortable there. I stared at him. Grandpa, you're 85. 87. And I'm still sharper than your father ever was on his best day. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather-bound notebook. I have a hotel room booked near the hospital for myself. I have my driver, Thomas, available to run errands for us. I have cleared my schedule, which mostly involves yelling at the television and pruning roses. Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mom told me you didn't care. She said you cut us off. Archibald's face darkened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Your mother, he said carefully, is a masterful storyteller. She told you I cut you off. She told me you wanted nothing to do with a grumpy old relic like me. She returned every birthday check I sent you boys. She returned the Christmas cards unopened. My mouth fell open. I never saw them. I thought you forgot about us. I never forget family, Marjorie. Real family. He leaned forward. Now go wash your face. We have work to do. I want to meet these great-grandsons of mine before they go under the knife. The morning of the surgery was a gray, sleeting mess in Chicago, but inside the hospital, the fluorescent lights made everything timeless. Having Archibald there was like having a personal battalion. He didn't say much, but his presence was a force field. When the intake nurse was dismissive about my questions, Archibald simply cleared his throat and stared at her over his spectacles until she apologized and double-checked the chart. When the boys were wheeled back, looking so small in their hospital gowns, William gripping his stuffed bear and Henry trying to be brave, Archibald walked alongside the gurneys as far as he was allowed. He squeezed their feet. "Vance men are made of iron," he told them. "You sleep. You wake up, you get stronger. That's the job." William, who had never met a great-grandfather before, managed a weak smile. "Yes, sir." The waiting was the hardest part. 6 hours. 6 hours of imagining nerves being severed, spines being drilled. I paced the waiting room floor until I thought I would burn a hole in the linoleum. Archibald sat in the corner reading a thick biography of Churchill, calm as a mountain. Every hour he would make me sit. He would hand me a bottle of water or a granola bar he had conjured from his bag. "Eat," he commanded. "You're the captain. The captain doesn't faint." Around noon, my phone pinged. I checked it reflexively. It was a notification from Facebook. Roberta had tagged Mom and Dad in a post. The video autoplayed. It was shaky footage from the deck of a yacht. The sun was shining in Newport. Champagne corks were popping. My mother was wearing a white linen suit, laughing with her head thrown back, holding a flute of mimosa. Roberta was dancing on a table wearing a tiara. My father was smoking a cigar, looking out at the ocean, looking unbothered. The caption, "New Beginnings." The past is ashes, the future is fire, celebrating life with the people who matter most. Hashtag Phoenix Rising, hashtag Vance Family Vacation. I felt bile rise in my throat. My sons were currently having screws inserted into their vertebrae, and the people who matter most were drunk on a boat in Rhode Island. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Archibald was looking at the screen over my shoulder. He didn't say a word. He just took the phone from my hand, turned it off, and slid it into his pocket. "Garbage," he said. One word, absolute judgment. "They didn't even text," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Not once. They haven't asked if the boys are out of anesthesia." "They are showing you who they are, Marjorie," Archibald said, his voice low and dangerous. "Believe them. Stop looking for water in a dry well." He took my hand in his. His skin was papery but warm, and held it. We sat like that for the next 3 hours. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He didn't say, "It will be fine." He just sat with me in the darkness of my fear, sharing the weight so it didn't crush me. When the surgeon finally came out, looking tired but smiling, saying the words "successful" and "stable," I collapsed into Archibald's chest. He held me up. He held me up, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a father. We thought the surgery was the mountain, but the recovery was the climb. The boys came home 5 days later, fragile, in pain, and requiring round-the-clock care. They needed help turning over, help using the bathroom, help with everything. I expected Archibald to leave. He had done his duty. He had paid for the private room upgrade at the hospital. He had been the other adult. But when we pulled into the driveway, he told his driver to bring his trunk inside. "I'm staying," he announced. "The guest room is downstairs. It's perfect for me. I can't do stairs well anyway." "Grandpa, you can't," I protested. "It's going to be loud, messy, and exhausting. You've done enough." "I have done nothing for 20 years, he said, hanging his coat in the closet next to Charles's old denim jacket. "I have catching up to do." And he did. Over the next 6 weeks, my house transformed. Archibald wasn't a warm, fuzzy teddy bear. He was strict. He was old school, but he was exactly what the boys needed. He sat by their beds and read to them not children's books, but stories of history, of explorers, of men who faced impossible odds. He taught them chess while they lay prone. He taught them that complaining was a waste of energy that could be used for healing. "Pain is information," he told Henry when he was crying during physical therapy stretches. "It tells you you're alive. It tells you where the work is. We don't fear it. We master it." It sounds harsh, but the boys responded to it. They straightened up. They wanted to impress him. They started calling him the General. He helped me too. He took over the kitchen. It turned out Archibald Vance could make a pot roast that would make you weep. He organized my bills. He sat with me at night after the boys were asleep drinking tea, and he asked me about my design work. He asked me about Charles. He listened. We created a routine, a family rhythm. It was the four of us against the world. I stopped checking Instagram. I stopped waiting for the text from my mother. I realized that the silence from Newport wasn't a punishment. It was peace. One evening about 5 weeks post-op, William was taking his first steps without the walker. He was shaky, sweat beading on his forehead. "I can't," William gasped. "You can," Archibald said from his chair. "Eyes up. Look at me. Don't look at your feet. Your feet know what to do. Your mind leads the way." William looked up, locked eyes with his great-grandfather, and took 3 independent steps. We cheered. I cried. Archibald just nodded, a small, proud smile tucking into the corner of his mouth. "Good," he said. "Tomorrow, 4 steps." It was a Tuesday afternoon in late May when the bubble burst. The boys were in the living room watching a documentary. I was in the kitchen prepping lunch. Archibald was in the backyard garden deadheading my neglected rose bushes. I heard a car door slam. Then another. Then the click-clack of heels on the walkway. The front door swung open without a knock. "Hello, anybody home? Good Lord, it smells like antiseptic in here." It was Estelle. She walked in, followed by Lawrence and Roberta. They looked tan-rested and aggressively cheerful. They were carrying gift bags from expensive boutiques. "Mom!" I wiped my hands on a towel, stepping out of the kitchen. "What are you doing here?" "We're back," Roberta announced, striking a pose. "The Phoenix has risen and returned to the Midwest. We decided to stop by and grace you with our presence before heading to the club." Estelle looked around the living room, wrinkling her nose. There were pillows on the floor for the boys' medical supplies on the side table, and a general sense of lived-in chaos. "Marjorie, really?" Estelle sighed. "The place is a sty. You knew we were coming back this week. You could have tidied up." "I didn't know you were coming here," I said, feeling my heart rate spike. "And I've been busy. The boys—" "Oh, right, the little surgery." Lawrence waved his hand dismissively. "How are the troopers up and running soccer drills yet?" He looked at William and Henry, who were lying on their supportive cushions wearing braces. They looked at their grandfather with wide, confused eyes. "Hi, Grandpa," Henry said quietly. "Hey, sport," Lawrence said, not moving toward them. "We got you some saltwater taffy from the coast. Don't eat it all at once." He tossed a bag onto the coffee table. Roberta flopped onto the sofa, narrowly missing William's leg. "God, you guys, the trip was spiritual. I literally feel like a new woman. Marjorie, you should have come. You need to get out more. You look tired." "Doesn't she look tired, Mom?" "She always looks tired," Estelle said, running a finger over a dusty bookshelf. "It's a choice, really. Martyrdom is so aging." I stood there trembling. They hadn't asked how the surgery went. They hadn't asked if the boys were in pain. They had just invaded my space, sucked all the oxygen out of the room, and reduced my 6 weeks of hell to martyrdom. "Did you see the photos?" Roberta asked, pulling out her phone. "You didn't like any of them. I checked. Mom said you're probably just jealous, but I told her no, Marjorie just isn't visual." "I was at the hospital," I said, my voice tight. "When you posted the first one, my sons were in the OR." "Oh, don't be dramatic," Estelle snapped. "They're fine. Look at them. Watching TV. They're fine." She walked over to the recliner in the corner, the high-backed leather chair that faced away from the door. "I'm going to sit. My feet are killing me. Lawrence, get me a water." She reached for the chair. "I wouldn't sit there if I were you, Estelle." A deep voice rumbled from the garden door behind me. The room went silent. The air pressure seemed to drop 10 degrees. Estelle froze her hand, hovering over the leather. Lawrence dropped the bottle of water he had just taken from the fridge. Roberta looked up from her phone, her mouth hanging open. Archibald stepped in from the garden. He was wearing a granddad cardigan and earth-stained gardening gloves. He looked like a giant. He slowly peeled off the gloves, finger by finger, never breaking eye contact with his son and daughter-in-law. "Father," Lawrence choked out. It was the voice of a scared child, not a 60-year-old man. "Hello, Lawrence," Archibald said. He walked past me, his cane thumping heavily on the hardwood. He moved to the chair Estelle had been about to claim, and instead of sitting, he stood in front of it, blocking it. What? What are you doing here? Estelle hissed, her face paling beneath her tan. I told you, you aren't welcome in this family. This isn't your house, Estelle, Archibald said. His voice was calm, devoid of anger, but filled with authority. This is Marjorie's house, and for the last 6 weeks it has been my home. You've been here, Roberta asked, looking between us. With her. With my family, Archibald corrected. While you three were drinking mediocre champagne on a rented boat pretending to be royalty, I was here holding vomit basins. I was here cheering for first steps. I was here being the father Lawrence was too busy to be. Lawrence flushed red. Now wait a minute, Dad. We had plans, important plans. Marjorie said she could handle it. Marjorie asked for help. Archibald boomed, his voice rising for the first time. The sound made the twins flinch, but they looked at him with awe. She begged for help, and you told her that her children's spines were less important than a divorce party. It was a rebirth celebration, Roberta shrieked. It was a display of narcissism. Archibald cut her off. He looked at Estelle. You called these boys burdens on the phone to your friend just now in the driveway. I heard you through the window. Estelle gasped. I did no such thing. Don't lie to me, Archibald said. He took a step forward. Estelle took a step back. I have spent 40 years watching you treat this woman. He pointed a gloved hand at me. Like a servant, like a shadow. I stayed away because I couldn't stand the noise of your selfishness. But I made a mistake. I left her alone with you. I won't make that mistake again. You can't talk to us like that, Lawrence sputtered, trying to find his lawyer voice. I am the head of this family now. Archibald laughed. It was a dry, dark sound. Head of the family. You're a wallet, Lawrence. A wallet attached to a spine made of jelly. You let this woman, he gestured to Estelle, rot your soul. You haven't made a decision without her permission since 1985. Get out! Estelle screamed, pointing at the door. Get out of my daughter's house! Archibald turned to me. Marjorie, is this your house? I looked at my mother. Her face was twisted in an ugly snarl. I looked at my father, who was staring at his shoes. I looked at Roberta, who was scrolling on her phone, probably looking for a way to spin this. Then I looked at the twins. They were watching me, waiting to see if the shadow would finally become solid. No, Mom, I said. My voice didn't shake. You get out. Estelle's eyes bulged. Excuse me. You heard me. You weren't here when we needed you. You don't get to be here when it's convenient. Get out, all of you. You can't be serious. Roberta laughed nervously. We have gifts. Take them, I said. We don't want your taffy. We wanted love. We didn't get it, so now you can leave. Fine. Estelle grabbed her purse. Come on, Lawrence. We don't need this abuse. We'll go where we're appreciated. And don't expect us for Christmas, Marjorie. Wait, Archibald said. One more thing. The room grew still again. Archibald walked over to the fireplace mantel where he had placed a thick manila envelope earlier that morning. He picked it up and tapped it against his palm. Lawrence Estelle Roberta, Archibald said. You enjoy the lifestyle you lead, don't you? The club memberships, the impulsive trips to Newport, the black cards. We work hard for our money, Estelle sniffed. Correction, Archibald said smoothly. You work hard spending my money. Lawrence went white. Dad don't. Lawrence was a mediocre lawyer, Archibald explained to me, ignoring him. He never made partner. The money, the house they live in, the trust that pays Roberta's alimony, the funds that paid for that yacht, it all comes from the Vance family trust. My trust, which I control until my death. He opened the envelope and pulled out a document. I called my attorneys 3 weeks ago. They came here. We had a lovely meeting at this very dining table. What did you do? Roberta whispered, her phone forgotten. I restructured the trust, Archibald said. Effective immediately, the maintenance allowance for Lawrence and Estelle is suspended. The discretionary fund for Roberta is terminated. You can't do that, Estelle screamed. We have mortgages, we have leases. Then I suggest you get jobs, Archibald said, cold as ice. Or sell the boat. I really don't care. Where is the money going? Lawrence asked, his voice shaking. Archibald walked over to where the twins were lying. He placed the envelope gently on the table between them. It is now the William and Henry Educational and Medical Trust. Marjorie is the sole trustee. Every dime that was funding your vanity is now funding their future, their college, their recovery, their lives. He turned back to them. The look on Estelle's face was one of pure, unadulterated horror. It wasn't sadness. It was the panic of a parasite losing its host. You have ignored these boys for a decade, Archibald said. Now you will watch them live the life you felt you were entitled to. You wanted to be the phoenix, rise from your own ashes. We are done funding the fire. Dad, please, Lawrence begged. We're family. No, Archibald said. He put his arm around my shoulders. This is family. You are just relatives, and you are trespassing. Get out. They fled. There is no other word for it. They scrambled out the door like roaches when the light turns on, clutching their boutique bags, shouting threats that vanished into the wind. When the door clicked shut, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was light. It was clean. 1 year later. The smell of roasted turkey and sage stuffing filled the house. The dining table was extended to its full length, covered in a tablecloth that didn't match the napkins, but no one cared. It was Thanksgiving. The house was full, but not with people who drained me. My friend Sarah from the design agency was there with her husband. The twins' physical therapist, a wonderful man named David, had stopped by with a pie. And at the head of the table sat Archibald. He looked a little older, a little frailer, but his eyes were bright. He was currently teaching William the proper way to carve the bird. Firm pressure guided by the wrist, Archibald instructed. William, now walking with only a slight limp and no cane, nodded seriously. Yes, sir. Henry was setting the table, laughing at a joke Sarah had told. He was thriving. He was happy. We hadn't heard from Lawrence or Estelle in 6 months. The last I heard, they had downsized to a condo in Florida and were suing each other. Roberta had apparently found a job as a receptionist at a yoga studio. I didn't wish them ill, I just didn't think of them at all. I brought the mashed potatoes to the table and sat down on Archibald's right side. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Good crowd, he murmured. The best, I said. I looked around the table. I realized that for 40 years I had been begging for a seat at a table where I was being served poison. I thought family was about blood and history and enduring pain because you shared a last name. Archibald had taught me the truth. Family isn't about whose DNA you carry. It's about who stands up when you can't. It's about who sits in the waiting room. It's about who defends you when you are too tired to speak. The shadow child was gone. I was Marjorie Vance. I was a mother, a granddaughter, and a survivor. And as I looked at my healthy sons and my hero of a grandfather, I raised my glass. To the family we choose, I said. To the family that chooses us, Archibald answered. The clink of the glasses was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. My name is Marjorie Vance, and I finally know what it means to be home. Thank you for reading my story. If you have ever had to cut ties with toxic family members to protect your peace, or if you were the invisible child growing up, I want to hear from you. How did you find the strength to stand up? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe for more stories of truth and resilience.